Hi, everybody. My name's Julie Teal. I'm with TTS Company, and thank you for joining us for this conversation about better conversations, better results. And if you've seen me do these presentations in the past, you know that TTS Company is focused on helping leaders of small to mid-sized businesses eliminate the bottlenecks that stand in the way of growth. And many of those bottlenecks typically are people and talent related. And a big part of that is that I know when you started your business, you were excited about the clients, maybe excited about the technology or for an MSP or MSSP. A lot of excitement about that. You didn't necessarily, I know most leaders didn't really think through the fact to grow your business, you're going to have a larger team. And that means a lot of management responsibilities, either directly for you with a ton of direct reports, many of you have, or it can mean a big load for people that are technical people on your team that have now taken on management responsibilities. So it's what we're doing today is taking a step back and taking a look at the conversations that make a meaningful difference in your team's results and frankly in your team's retention, because I know you've invested a lot in the people that are on your team, and the more capable and qualified they are to keep the work going and represent the clients and to do the work, the better off your organization is going to be. So what we're going to be talking about today is this idea of leadership really happens just one conversation at a time. At the end of the day, if you think about a lot of the most meaningful moments you've had, probably in developing your career, it's been coaching and advice from a person, and it's all started with a conversation. So the idea here is to really start to get you prompt by the end of this. If there's a conversation you've been avoiding with a member of your team, I want you to feel more prepared and more ready to take that next step after today. So we're going to talk about different conversation focuses or types, or how to approach different conversations. So you're going to get very practical tools today that you can use right away. So with that, um, I when I was reflecting on this topic, I really came up with 5 critical conversations that every leader needs to get comfortable with and build their skills in order to be most effective. And as you'll see here, it's coaching, accountability, career development conversations, conflict and recognition. And I guess when you look at it this way, that feels like a lot. But these are the things that happen in the course of your day-to-day work. And again, if you're not being intentional about these conversations, it's easy to get behind or potentially overwhelmed or avoid them completely. I think that's, I know I'm I'm a bit of, I love to manage people. I've managed our big teams, but I don't always lean into these. I sometimes hesitate myself. So I come into this really understanding the fact that it's just so easy to focus on the next thing to do, the next client work, the next thing, and really put your team on the back burner. And that unfortunately doesn't get your business to the next level. So let's talk about ways you can get comfortable with these 5 types of conversations and get ready for the future. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get into those 5, there are just some general principles for every conversation that I just want to ground us in before we jump into those specific types. So anytime you're having any of these conversations with your team, first of all, I just want to encourage you, don't miss the opportunity to connect. I'm a big believer in regular one-on-one meetings, so that having a conversation about any of these topics is not a big event. It just becomes part of the day-to-day cadence of your business and how you interact with your team. And again, the general principle is you can't build a relationship with someone you never talk to. So you really need to be building good working relationships with your team. And in doing that, you need to be meeting with them regularly. Now, it doesn't have to be terribly formal. It can be a quick 15-minute check-in. It can be, every other week. If you've got somebody who's really experienced, maybe you're really only sitting down once a month. I'm not like super hardcore on how. I think though, you have to have some intention around how often you're meeting with and talking to your team. So connect before you correct, or really jump into any of these before any of these types of meetings. So take the time to build relationships. That'll make every conversation easier in the long run and feel much more natural. The second one is, you often need to prepare more than you think. It's easy to kind of wing it. It's easy to wing it. And again, I would say some conversation is better than no conversation. So if winging it's what you got, I suppose that's fine. But I'm just saying, in some of these conversations we're going to be talking about, preparation can make a big difference. Thinking through what you plan to say, thinking through the feedback you have to say, can make a huge difference in the impact of the conversation. And always, when you're giving feedback, whether it's good or corrective, right? Because every employee needs some sort of coaching. Focus on behaviors, not personalities. So be careful about generalizing when you talk about someone and how they operate and what they do. Really force yourself, and this is where the preparation comes in, to talk about the behavior, not focus on the personality. So the other thing I'll say in every conversation, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a conversation with an intention, and then through the conversation, something else is revealed, right? Like, I think there's an issue, but there's a process problem. So staying curious, putting yourself out there to say, here's what I'm seeing, here's the conversation I want to have, and then be open to where that goes, because that staying curious and open is going to make a big difference in the impact of your conversations. And then for every conversation, try to have some clear next steps. So what are you going to do next as a result of the conversation that you just have? What are you going to do? What's the employee going to do? So these are just general principles that are true across the board before we jump into these 5 different types. So with that, let's talk about the first conversation. And if you're follow me at all, I did a LinkedIn newsletter on this topic specifically, went deep into it. So take a look at my LinkedIn profile and take a look at that most recent LinkedIn newsletter, because it goes deep into this. But every employee needs coaching to improve. So, and they can't read your mind. So everyone needs that support to improve. So the way I frame up a coaching conversation is it's helping, employees become even better. So helping someone improve. And the place where this often goes wrong is if you wait too long to have the discussion. Excuse me, just one moment. If you wait too long to have this conversation, that's when it gets awkward. So taking action is important. So here's a framework for this. So first of all, kind of the rule of thumb I have is, if I observe someone doing something that they could be improved, okay, coachable action. If I see it once, okay, sometimes you don't want to jump on people all the time if they're doing something, but if you see it once, okay, well, maybe it's just a one-time thing. If you see it twice, you really do need to say something, because this poor person may have not been trained. There may be 100 reasons why they're taking the action they are. And if you wait beyond that, you're going to get into, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? So I don't want you to be in that situation. So rule of thumb, if it comes up twice, or even if you think of it twice, that's the prompt to have the conversation. So when you're going into these conversations, here's the framework that I give you. So, share your observation, describe what you saw, describe what success looks at. So you kind of are defining the gap. Here's what I saw, here's what I need you to do, right? So those 2 things, you've got a gap. Then ask questions to say, is this what you were trained in? Tell me a little bit about, why you took this path. And again, this is where getting curious really helps, because there may be a gap in your training or other things that are going on that you just don't know about. So again, coaching is incredibly important, but always stay curious. Ask questions, offer support, and then follow up. So coaching is incredibly important, can be very simple. And the type of support that I'd encourage you to consider is, sometimes that person just needs an example. So you can even say, hey, I'm going to solve that problem over here with this client. Do you want to sit in and listen to how I did it? And then you can also say, okay, here's an example of what I'm on this side of the gap, you're on this side of the gap. How do we get you there from a coaching standpoint? So again, things to be thinking about as you coach people. So that's the first conversation. The second conversation is accountability. So this is more when there's a bigger issue. Things like this is not a refinement. Like coaching, I consider more of a refinement. Accountability is when something there's some missed expectation, there's a missed deadline, there's a follow through problem, there's a reliability problem, things like this. So these are a little bit more serious, and these can be the precursor, obviously, if things don't improve, to more of a performance improvement plan. But you've got to have accountability conversations as you go. And the big thing is to talk about it. You have to go in and talk about what you saw and what the impact was. So I think you need to, so here's a framework. So discuss what happened, what was expected, what was the impact, because you've got to say, hey, when you're not here, these 5 other people have to pick up the work. And again, they've got their own work to do. So those types of things, you've just got to be honest with people about the impact. And then what needs to happen next. So accountability ideally creates clarity. It's not designed to be a punishment, although people do. Again, feelings get hurt. People don't intend, they get embarrassed. I mean, obviously, that is just part of the coaching or conversations, leadership conversation process. The big thing that I challenge you on is don't assume intent, because you don't know until you have the conversation. On one hand, you may, in the conversation, when you stay curious and ask questions, sometimes there could be a health issue happening. There could be something going on at home that has created this employee that used to be reliable to not be reliable. And having those conversations can really help, at least create better understanding about what's happening in a situation like this. The other thing is that there may be some other conflict that's come up. There may be some other competing priority that's come up. There may be other things that are part of the system. You may have a system problem, not a person problem, but you won't know until you actually have the conversation. So if you're seeing things again that need to be addressed, don't wait. Similar to a coaching conversation, you want to make a good employee better. In this case, you want to have someone stop doing something or start doing something that's a myth that is going to impact their job. So accountability conversations are a bit different tone, but they're certainly really important to have. You got to be able to have an accountability conversation. The third conversation that is so important, that again often gets missed in the day-to-day busyness, is this idea of a career conversation, helping someone prepare for what's next. And the focus of this conversation is more about future capability. And I'll share a personal story. So I've worked for some great leaders over the years, and one of the most important, impactful conversations I ever had was with a leader who was preparing me for the next level. I was an individual contributor, and she was preparing me to be a manager. And her feedback to me was, Julie, you've been rewarded forever, for years and years, on doing 110%, about doing extra, going above and beyond. And again, that has gotten you where you are today. However, when I put you into a manager job, that's not going to work for you. You will quickly burn out and get overwhelmed if your whole focus is doing above and beyond on every single thing you do and expecting everyone else to do that as well. And she had a really good, important conversation with me about this idea of sometimes doing 80% is enough. Like, what's good enough? And you can pick and choose where you decide to go above and beyond, but that can't be your run rate, because it won't work as you get into bigger and bigger jobs. And that was, at the time, I was a little bit like, what do you mean you don't want me to do good work? Like, I was a little bit like, I don't know. It was a little hard to hear, frankly, at the time, but it is proved out to be my Achilles heel. She called me on it then. It is still something I work on. I tend to overcommit. I tend to overdo. And I've had to really manage that, because that can affect teams and their output too. It's like, if I'm overcommitting everyone, that doesn't help anyone. So I've had to really, really dial into what's good enough. Where do I do 60%? Where do I do 80%? Where do I do 100% or more? There's a place for it, but I need to choose it. It can't just be how I run. So that was one of those incredibly insightful conversations that has affected me for decades since. And you, as a leader, have the ability to help prepare people for the next level. And again, like I said, sometimes they're not doing anything wrong. It's just, hey, I'm getting you ready for this job. In this job, you're going to have to do that differently. And let's talk about that and even share your own experience with those transitions. The big thing, the challenges that's listed here is don't wait for the employee to ask. It's just hard if it's almost like you want to beat people to the punch to tell them that you see them building their careers or developing more, or you see them eventually being that expert trainer for every new hire that comes in because you love how they do the work. Those are not necessarily career changes, but they're role changes that are really important and things that you want to communicate to people, what you see in them that is going to contribute even more in the future. So again, that takes a little time sometimes to think about, prepare, and reflect. But when you do that, the upside is huge for an organization. So we talked about coaching, we talked about accountability, we talked about career conversations. The next one is conflict. So whether there's a conflict between you as a leader and that person, whether there's a conflict be happening between them and another department, there's all number of conflicts that can be happening. And as a leader, I know it's not the most fun thing, but it is your job to help resolve conflict. And you want to help resolve disagreements in a way that helps strengthen the relationship. And the way you do that is really trying to seek to understand before you try to solve the problem. And the major issue in these is that emotions get in the way. People, when you're in conflict, you're in this like fight or flight state, this kind of activated state. And it becomes really difficult to think clearly and be open to what the other person has to say when that's going on. So emotions end up being the derailer in these cases, whether it's you or the employee. And again, people will model. This is one of the things I've realized over the years. You set the tone. So you set the temperature, the thermometer for every discussion. And you can't completely manage the other person. But if you go in high emotions, that person's going to rise up there or shut down. So, but if you go in kind of calm, steady, open to listen, like this is happening, this isn't working, we need to come to a resolution. If you're calm and stay that kind of what I call low and slow, if you talk a little bit slower, kind of lower tone, even, it can make a huge difference in conflict conversations to help people feel heard and to help get to a resolution. So when you're going into a conflict, the big thing we talked about here is seek to understand, separate intent from impact. Like, I know you intended this, but this is how it came across, unfortunately, and this is the impact. So I think you need to be good at kind of parsing out, I understand what you're trying to do, how you did it created this conflict. So there can be that can be a way to help people feel heard and acknowledged and get to a better outcome and resolution. Again, stay curious, keep saying that, super important. And then solve the problem together. So, how do you think we should resolve this? Like, what do you think is a good resolution? Sometimes that can be really interesting to put it on them and see what they have to say, because everybody needs to be able to get along in the workplace. And again, reasonable people will disagree. And so, one of my favorite people, one of his ways that I just really admire. We were trying to resolve an issue. I felt strongly about something. He felt strongly about something. We just could not see each other's point of view. We kind of again, a little bit of a conflict. What he did, which just really touched me, was he said to himself, after the conversation, he goes, Julie's smart. Julie knows what she's doing. Why would she think this? Like, I mean, it was one of those, I'm going to put myself in her shoes and try to prove her point correct. I'm going to try to prove that that's correct so that he could have a change of view on the way he was looking at it. And it was just one of those like, boy, that diffused the situation. I felt heard. He still, I mean, again, we still have a difference of opinion on pieces of this, but it went from being something where we just couldn't seem to land. We were able to land on a way to move forward from that conversation. Again, I give him all the credit. He came at it with a really, I think, thoughtful approach. And that idea of really looking like taking going deep to understand the other person, it can lead to some really good understanding. And again, that I'm not asking you to change your opinion, but just to try to understand the other person and really hear them can go a long way when you're resolving conflicts. So, and again, this is something you're not going to do perfect. You're not going to resolve conflict perfectly. You're not going to have perfect conversations, but you need to have them. And again, you're only going to get better at resolving these over time. Avoiding them does not help you get where you need to go. So, and then the fifth conversation is recognition. And the issue that comes up with recognition, you'd think that would be an easy conversation, right? But the truth is that a lot of leaders assume their employees already know when they're doing a good job. And what my challenge to you would say be, maybe they know, maybe they don't. And it's really on you to really be thoughtful about sitting down with someone to say, let me tell you the things you're doing well specifically, not just, hey, good job. I mean, that's nice to say, but it's more meaningful when you say, you know what I really appreciate about how you handled that client is you did this, you did this, you did this. Give examples. That is going to be much more meaningful than just saying a general good job. And taking time to have these conversations, I think, is part of what separates really effective teams from teams that are struggling. So you got to reward the good, you got to coach on the things that improve, you got to hold people accountable, you have to develop their careers, and you need to resolve conflict. These are all core functions of what it takes to be a leader. And I know the problem is most people are never trained on any of this, which is why it's been this kind of mission of mine to get to work with leaders in small companies to get you some of the skills you need to lead. It's critical. And so let's start to kind of bring this all together then. So we've talked about the 5 conversations. And really, when you're bringing this all together um, and being intentional about it, it can make a huge difference because what you'll see in the organization, I've seen over and over again, better conversations lead to better relationships, which build trust, of course. And when there's trust, people and people will put out more effort. Like you feel like you're safe. You know where you stand. You know if something comes up, you're going to hear about it. You're not going to be surprised by it. You're not going to be ambushed by a problem in the future. People will put out better effort when they feel like there's relationship and trust. And then that leads to better performance, which leads to better results. So there's this kind of this positive cycle that happens when you really, as a leader, take the time to improve your conversational skills and how you lead teams. So, and this ultimately is why I created the vault. So again, this is something I've been talking about. I've just submitted the last bit. We're like pending any day now to be approved as an app that you can have on your phone for the vault. Leadership's complicated, and most people are learning kind of as they go. And again, that's not the worst way to learn, but it really can make a difference if you have some support. So what the Vault is, and you can get it right now on desktop. So it is available on desktop. It'll eventually be available also on your phone through an app. But it really is designed to help you improve your conversations and situations on how you handle day-to-day leadership. And so you'll get a couple previews into the system here. When you join the Vault, you get monthly leadership skills training. And in fact, this month's skill training, we're breaking down every week 10 minutes you can do to prepare for having a coaching conversation with one of your team members. So we've picked some of these 5. We're month by month going through and helping you walk through how to have coaching conversations. We'll also, every month there's skills training, similar to a little bit of what we covered here. There's resources you can access. There's a place to ask questions. So again, you can get support from peers and from our leadership experts that are in the system. So really, it's a way for you to invest in leadership on a day-to-day standpoint. I think it is fabulous if you go to offsite leadership development training for a day or a couple half days, things like that. Those are great. Those can give you some really good knowledge. The difficulty is applying it day to day. It is difficult to remember. And the things you get with the vault are these kind of regular reminders and training on how to become a better leader. And again, teams thrive, companies thrive when there's good leaders leading teams. So incredibly important. So what I want you to be thinking about, who on your team needs a conversation with you this week? I'm sure as I went through this, you hopefully again you were, again, if you would like the slides to this, put slides in the chat and I'd be happy to send those to you so you can have that as a resource. But it's one of those, like, you've got to have conversations. Like, there's someone that popped into your mind as we talked about this. And my challenge to you is to actually prepare for and have the conversation. Because I'm telling you, even if it's not perfect, it's better to have a conversation than not. So take that time this week. And if today's webinar is helpful, I'd love to invite you to join us inside the vault. This QR code will take you to our page on my website that describes more about the vault. You can join the wait list. We are literally weeks away from really launching this officially. So like within weeks, you're going to be able to sign up and start to get the leadership development you need. Right now, we're doing beta testing. We're about done with that and ready to go live. So I hope you'll plan to join us. And remember, leadership happens one conversation at a time. And you are being a leader as you step into those conversations. And again, I'm not always, I'm not always graceful in the conversation, but I have them. And that is really where you start to make progress. So thank you. My name is Julie Teal. Again, I'm the founder of TTS Company. We offer the vault. If you want to find out more, go to thettscompany.com where you can find more about the vault. Thank you so much.